ICE raids are coming. What can you do? Because the undocumented people cannot afford to stop their lives. They cannot afford to move. What can we as a village do in order to protect them? And to understand this, we have to look back to 1994. There was a Rwandan genocide occurring where one phrase from a Radio Rwanda host proclaiming cut down the tall trees led to the immediate unaliving of over 800,000 Tutsi Rwandans in only 100 days. As neighbors were going against neighbors to do horrendous things, some people are capable of going towards what they believe to be safety. One of these is what I'm going to call Hotel Rwanda because that's what the film is based on, this true story. Basically, the Rwandan administrator went through a whole series of events that led to him having to house a ridiculous amount of victims seeking safety from the hotel that was protected by a few peacekeepers from the United Nations. This gave the illusion of safety, and for a good amount of them, it ultimately did give them that. We know where ICE is going to hit this Sunday, and it is going to be the tracked address of who they perceive to be undocumented. What does this mean? Even if you don't know or think that your address is known, you have to understand yourself to be vulnerable to being knocked on. Now, the most realistic thing is that you follow along and not allow for them to enter your home. Pretend like you're not home. Ask for the warrant. When they present a warrant, that is signed by an immigration administrator or clerk. That's not a judge, so that's not valid. They cannot enter your home. However, plenty of immigrants get really panicky and then just open the door because they don't want to get in trouble, not understanding that they're going to get in trouble anyways. So accepting that this is kind of a hit or miss, we need to have another plan. That other plan requires people who support the immigrant population, the undocumented population, stepping up, who have multiple properties or large properties to volunteer to house some guests for as long as it takes for this to cool down. And this means the quick creation of a network of sort of underground railroad channels in which to channel them from where they currently live to a safe spot. Now, in the past, immigrants who have felt that they would be next would go to churches. And still, this is a practice. This is why the administration wants to go into churches and conduct their raids. In our reality, what we have to maximize on is private rights, like private property rights, where they cannot enter into your home without a warrant. And eventually, by the time they do get a warrant for a suspected zone, they'll be in a different zone. So we as citizens have to use the privileges that we have in order to facilitate their safety through the means that we're capable of doing. Maybe, like I said, you have multiple properties. Maybe you have a big property. Maybe you have multiple rooms. Maybe you have a plot of land. Or maybe you can volunteer to actually go out and do the chores for them. Maybe they need some grocery stuff. Maybe they need to go pick up their pharmacy. Maybe they need to do this, and that, you know? Let's do that for them in order for them to not go out in public. Kind of like an Uber Eats or an Uber kind of perspective, except that this is obviously through our own goodwill in order to protect them, like they did with the Jews. Because the greatest risk is being out in public. The greatest risk is being somewhere where the government knows that you are being undocumented. Now, unfortunately, this may mean that the children cannot go to school. But, I mean, I think they would prefer that than having their parents taken or having the whole family taken, right? This may mean they cannot go outside, which gives you goosebumps, right? But we have to be serious about this. We need creative methods in which to keep them safe. And this starts from a community. And this starts from trusted community organizations, because you know there's going to be people who try to interject themselves and exploit them. Instead of sending them to a safe zone, they send them to ICE. So while knowing your rights is extremely important, I think it's even more critical to remove themselves from that even position of being vulnerable to them being successful in accessing the home. We as citizens must maximize on private property rights in order to protect them from getting picked up by the Gestapo. And also community fundraising so that these families who do take on this housing weight also have the financial means of sustaining new additions to the family until that's fixed, right? A suspected housing zone, officially, they're on to the next safe house. This is the best way rather than just putting it on the undocumented immigrants themselves, a lot of them who don't speak actual English or comprehend legal rights, to defend themselves when we could just literally hide them. Yes, That's literally what these whole 5 minutes was about hiding undocumented immigrants. We must hide them from the Gestapo. All right, so this is serious, and we need to think creatively while also maximizing on community grassroots assistance in order to sustain the actual cost of doing so. If you love an immigrant, if you care about an immigrant, if you're an ally of the community, of actual people who would be picked up by the Gestapo, it's time for you to choose your role in this. Maybe you cannot yourself do this, but we together can create those spaces in which it's sustainable for them to be protected in. All that has to be done is spread awareness. Unfortunately, I'm heavily suppressed, especially after the swearing, but I guess at least history will see that I tried, which is ultimately what matters because we ourselves make the choices that creates our legacy. And even if not immediately impactful, it's ultimately those intentions and those steps towards doing the right thing that will ultimately leave the most impact, I feel, at least. I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised if I bent the knee, but I refuse to. As a conflict scholar, I know the consequences of allowing for them to just have free reign of my state. And until our governor, Gavin Newsom, grows some cojones, we're gonna have to defend them ourselves lawfully. Wink. I don't know how to wink.